Viewer discretion is advised.
A big hard point for a lot of people is like, what if it's not real? What if we only hear about the success stories, but there's a million Tony Robbins who never made it? That's not my experience. My experience so far is that when you put one foot forward, there'll be something there to meet you, but it won't come out until you put that foot forward.
Mandate.
Welcome to Mandate, where we navigate fresh perspectives and nothing is off the table. Tonight's guest is from Tāmi Kimakura Okilani, but originally from the Coromandel. He's an amazing man with an amazing journey and story to share. The man was also a podcast as well, and started in 2013. The man also worked at TVNZ, TV3, working in the graphics team, but also the promo team, creating ads and making ads. But in recent times, the man has decided to follow his own path and follow his own aspirations. The man has decided to create a Cook Island, yes, the Cook Islands production company called Campfire Studios. And also the man is very heavily involved in the schools and high schools, developing and creating a podcast, I guess you could say, kind of venture or ideas in terms of developing a podcast for our young people, and also that earns them credits as well. Please put your hands together for the remarkable and incredible Will Fleming!
Awesome. I'll take a quick drink to that. Thank you for having me.
Ooh, my man, thank you so much also for coming out this evening.
Absolutely.
It's obviously it's been a minute. I think you've always been in the scope of us getting you on, and so brother, tell us, because you're quite an entrepreneurial individual. You've just jumped out in faith, as we talked earlier on, and tell us how has that been thus far in creating and developing these programs and podcasting and so forth. Tell us what's the deal, man? Man,
it is scary and rewarding and like that at the very same time. It's interesting when you are talking about me, I'm like, wow, that's awesome. And then, but you don't think of yourself like that, eh? You think of like, I'm just me on this journey of 40 something years trying to find where I fit in the world, but I just think it's awesome that if you really try and analyze where you fit in the world, sometimes you do find your space, and I'm just trying to thrive in that space, which is like creating spaces like this, having conversations, and like those are the bits being missed in our modern world. Everyone's like talking about algorithms and AI. No one talks about that. When we sit down, I've looked at some research which says our heartbeats start to sync, and like that's some human deep connection. So what went wrong that we needed podcasts to bring us back to connecting in real life? It's it blows my mind, and but yeah, thank you for having me. It's cool. I'm like, I've been buzzing out at your podcast because actually locally in Aotearoa there's not many podcasts that aim to have video, audio, short clips, amazing guests, regularity. So hats off to you and the team too. It's cool.
Oh man, props, man. Thanks, appreciate that, bro. And likewise to you, because I know obviously Campfire Studios, you're obviously running your own podcast as well, and so, bro, hats off to you as well. You're still in the game, and you're teaching young people how to come up with their own podcast. And so, bro, tell us if you can just run it back in terms of Campfire Studios and the production and the company that it is.
Absolutely. Like, for me, I need it to be simple. Like, I think of your name of the podcast, Mandate's got a couple meanings, and same with Campfire. It had to be, for me, it's like a campfire. You sit around it, you get heat from it. I don't know if you've had those chats around a campfire, but you can cook from it. You can speak to it. You can absolutely guarantee our ancestors worldwide would have used fire to like keep them safe, And so like I take all of those attributes and I'm just like, okay, imagine I've got to do that in the studio. And so when you come into our space, maybe there's not a literal fire, but I try and provide a space like that. And I don't know why that just popped into my head one day. Maybe I'd thought about that. Maybe I'd been in heaps of scenarios professionally where it wasn't campfire, where it was like the opposite, where it was just like a boardroom and some expert, telling me what they think. And I'm like, really? But, again, probably we've talked a little bit off air about maybe chasing a passion, chasing a dream, and the guts it takes. And sometimes I like the idea that it does take like that campfire. You've got your pals around you or people who believe in you. Imagine the amount of like I don't know, things that are going on in the world, and people are prepping for that, and they're doing it around that campfire, you know. And I just really fascinated with the guts it takes to try something. And even though, like, you know, Campfire's going now and it's going okay, we have some good contracts and we're doing stuff. And like you said, we're trying to I'm trying to encourage kids to be able to talk more, and actually for them to realize that we don't have to tell them all the reasons it's good, just to actually provide a space where they can talk more, and they will talk more, and to get like school credits for that. So that's term 2 this year, 2024, when we're recording. I go into Manurewa High School and I take a cohort of students, and they won't write one word to get 4 credits. And I just think that's so cool, you know, and it means a lot to me because like school was hard. You know, I'd never got diagnosed for what I think was like dyslexia, but when I looked at words at school, they were just like everywhere, you know. And so we talk about traumas and that. I'm probably like starting to freak out thinking about those days, you know, starting to get all a bit sweaty because it's like that stays with you. But, you know, oddly, that's my business now, is to try and like find ways to have these chats. And it's I don't know. It's like, maybe, so do you guys even realize the kind of awesome stuff we're doing with podcasting? Or is it, you know what I mean? Because we can get into the zone where you're making another episode, but I reckon we're simulating something that's going to be way better in the future. Yeah. You know, like these spaces where people can record. So, yeah, what do you think?
I mean, before we go there, because you're the man behind all these other interviews, you get to interview some pretty amazing people. And I don't think people know who you are. And so who are you, Will? Tell us who you are.
Yeah,
like,
well, see, I'm exactly that person. I've passed it on. It's been something I've been way more comfortable doing. I'm from my mum's from the Cook Islands. Yeah. The islands of Maoke, and her family is Aitutaki, and she came here as a 6-year-old kid. You know, she couldn't speak English. She was forced into school. You know, they said, "What's your name?" And she said her first name, Rita Peta. And they said, "We don't know what that means." We heard Rita. Wow. So they called her Rita her whole life. And she was just somebody who had a lot of love to give. She was really awesome mum. She passed away a couple of years ago to cancer. And on the other side of that is my grumpy old Palangi dad, who's mean to everyone except me. I'm like his, you know, beacon of hope. Where
pride and joy.
And so we've had this, you know, kind of amazing relationship. But that's who I am. I'm somebody who came through a New Zealand system, and I presented a bit more like my dad, you know, a bit more European. So my mum thought, cool, you're just going to be European. And then she went ahead and got cancer and passed away, and left me with these unanswered questions. Where do I come from? Where's my other heritage? Wow. And that all came along the same time that I was not fulfilled with the work I was doing. I used to work in, you know, TVNZ and TV3, and like, look at the news that's going through with them. They're all shutting down. Yeah. And I would like to say I left because I saw that coming, but I didn't. I just left because that wasn't fulfilling for me to tell such, you know, defined stories. Like, you had to know the answer. I'm way more comfortable in a zone where there's no answer. So it just happened that, you know, podcasting was on the rise, and, you know, since 2013 I've been podcasting, and that was before video, because video was too expensive, and even audio was expensive. In 2013 you could upload to Apple. That was the main podcast platform. And so we'd have these tiny little MP3 clips that you had to compress the hell out of.
How long did that take?
Ages, you know, and they were so small, but they still cost so much to put online. And these were these audio only files. And in 2013 I did a podcast collaboration with a friend, and my first podcast was called My Kiwi Life. And like, it went like viral back in 2013, but I was so dumb, I didn't know to like capitalize on it. And so it was getting like, you know, 30,000-40,000 downloads an episode, and that was back then. And I was like, oh no, I think I'm gonna go do something else now. And everyone's like, don't. But in hindsight, you know, I'm happy I did that, because it's led me to follow my own path. You know, I think I'm someone who gets very nervous about the idea of walking my own path. I'd rather team up. But of course, when you team up, You know, you've got a team and everyone's got complex needs. You know how it is. Apart outside of your relationship, I guess your person in life. I'd always find that we'd have these synergies, and then we'd chase after this dream, and then all of a sudden, you know, everyone else's trauma comes up, and so you're like, So I think the lesson was just follow your own path, and
Is it trauma or is it ego?
It's all of the above, you know, but it's also and maybe there's many people like me. It's that worry that you're not enough. You know, so that's the bit I don't have is I don't really know where I belong in terms of my identity. I belong everywhere and nowhere. And so I've been trying to zoom into that, like, you know, what are the things that worked for me growing up outside of the things that didn't? And like I said, I was always able to kind of maybe read a room or understand that everyone's got different energies. And as soon as I realized I could guide people through like a podcast where they felt safe and where they would open up, I was like, you're doing it, you're talking about it, you know, all of that stuff. So it's kind of hard to, I feel a bit resistant. I don't want to be in reflective mode yet. I'm not finished pushing, you know, so maybe in 10, 15 years we can do it again and I'll be like, all right, I'll slow down a bit, but I just feel like, you know, it's make or break. We've got to make this, you know.
What do you feel you're pushing up against? I like what you've just said there. You don't want to be reflective here, but you're pushing. I want to see
if it's true. I want to see if having a vision and chasing that can give you what you want, which is control over your destiny. I think about that in monetary terms, maybe something like financial freedom. Not that I'm huge on money, I've never been, but I have hung around enough people who don't worry about money. And it'd be nice to not worry about it. And what do you worry about when you don't worry about money? You know, who knows? I haven't kind of reached that part yet, but
having too much.
Watching Bitcoin soar. And I wish I had done something about it. But you know, like, just it's a little bit like that conversation around faith. Like, a big hard point for a lot of people is like, what if it's not real? You know, what if chasing your dream, what if we only hear about the success stories, but there's a million Tony Robbins who never made it? You know? I just feel pretty gutted, but that's not my experience. My experience so far is that when you put one foot forward, there'll be something there to meet you, but it won't come out until you put that foot forward. And it's I don't know, it's a faith for me, you know, and other things come out too. And of course, the things that you realize that start happening is because you're taking initiative, you're able to identify other areas, you know, like we talked about in our pre-chat, not enough of our elders being recorded. That's actually a business idea. You know, it's a product that is needed and is not currently offered. And if I was News Hub and TVNZ, that's what I'd do with the studio when it's not being used for 1 hour a day for news. Because that's what happens. It's 1 hour a day. They turn all their lights on and they do the 6 p.m. news.
Really? Wow.
Why wouldn't they? You know, they should have the courage to say, we're going to open this up for families to come through and record. You know, we've got the safest environments, the best parkings, the gears, but they never did that. And so we're doing it.
True. Do you think part of their collapse, can I call it that? Do you think part of their collapse is because they haven't thought outside the box? They haven't diversified. They've just done the old traditional thing and just got comfortable, safe, and thought, this will never end.
And maybe that's what happens when you reach not worrying about money. You worry about just trying to keep things the same, you know?
Wow.
Until it gets eroded. But
just stay alive. But not live.
And then those systems are so big, you know, that there's gatekeepers upon gatekeepers, and you're the crazy one if you ask them to change. I did, and I tried to say to colleagues, like, hey, YouTube's getting pretty big, you know, said that in 2011. And they were like, I remember a boss standing up at TVNZ and he said, what we never anticipated was people turning the cameras on themselves. you know. And I think they were describing YouTube, where it's all record your own stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, great, you've identified it. What are we going to do about it? And nothing was the answer. So 10 years later,
Wow.
60 people sacked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's spreading over now, eh?
Yeah, and like I'm actually, it's weird, because it's a big podcast, so like, oh gosh, I'm going to make some enemies now, but whatever. Not the first guest you've had that's done that.
You won't be the last.
Yeah. But like that's their fault, you know?
Yeah.
Like I don't think it's a surprise that I went off and diversified,
No.
because you have to be open to that. You can't just sit around and wait. And I say to all the people I work with, I took TV skills into community. And so cool for me that I'm thriving. There's all of my colleagues who can do the same,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
in all of their different areas, whether it's graphic design. Well, where were you designing for your local community and making posters? Why did people have to run charities and be graphic designers? You know, the answer is they probably shouldn't have had to do that, but everyone's developed those skills now,
Yeah.
you know? Yeah, just like you guys. Now you're podcasters, and it's like you probably didn't want to be, but you had to be, because those stories need to be.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Will, it's just one of those things. Obviously, and you see, like you said just recently, that you know, in Tamaki Makota, there's not too many podcasters out there. And just recently, in the last few weeks, we've seen some other podcasts, some other brothers who are coming out and doing their own podcast. Props to Iliota Sapolo, he's doing his own podcast, and Vela, Manusaute. They've all decided to pop up and do podcasts around and share their own stories. But if we're going back to you, brother, because obviously TVNZ, TV3, great job, and you said you were unfulfilled. But what was the defining moment when you decided, you know what, I'm just going to jump out in faith and just do it? When was it, or what made you like, you know what, I'm just going to do it?
Yeah, I had to be pushed, you know, because I'm not someone who. So I think back to the managers who were not great managers to me, and I love them so much now because they essentially pushed me to believe that I can have a bit more control. I'm somebody who's very comfortable, you know, like if you give me a little, just a, you know, like a pig, give me my mud and I'll just sit there. But it took a lot, you know. I had to have, because, you know, I deal in the world of content. For me, it doesn't just mean the output of a video. It means like the people I'm filming with. So I'm always been very conscious of like, you can sit people in front of cameras and make them do something, even if they don't want to. But the best outcome is when they do something that they want to do, and you get the gold, you know. And I think that's why this podcast is awesome, because you're doing that, you know. You're providing those opportunities for people to speak their mind, and like, and you know, it's not always comfortable, you know, to do that. But if you feel like we're trusted and we can have a crack at that. But I was getting into situations with people I worked for where I'd want to develop relationships with the people I was going to film. And I was always being challenged, you know, how is that fitting in with your job description, you know? And then also, maybe it's because I was getting a bit older. I was in these opposite to campfire rooms, you know, boardrooms, glass windows, and people look in and observe you like a fishbowl. And they were starting to like pretend they were Hollywood producers. Oh, can we just, you know, do the pacing a bit? I'm like, what are you talking about? You know, you don't know. You're a manager. Manage me, you know. And so eventually, you know, I won't mention names and stuff, but it came to the point where I was put through, you know, HR, because it was an accusation that I, you know, essentially wasn't doing my job. And, you know, I took a lawyer and stuff, because I'm like, actually, no, I am doing my job, and my job is to develop key relationships and to practice my skills, and then to come back and like, my job is not to write an Excel of all the videos I've created so you have an archive. Go on YouTube, it's archived already, you know. But in the end, I kind of, you know, if anyone's been through that HR thing, it's very scary, because you feel like you're kind of you know, being attacked a little bit, all these negatives or perceived negatives. But the lawyer, we went through and there was no thing put on my official record. But the next day I handed in my notice, and I just said, and Caroline, I said to you before we started recording, I started podcasting because I didn't understand the dark thoughts people have. I started to recognize, man, if I stay in the system where I'm questioning, am I doing a good job or not, I'm going to start having dark thoughts. So I said to my wife, I think I need to do my own thing. And she says, yeah, go on then, I got your back.
Yeah.
And I still thank her for that, because that's a hell of a conversation to have when you got 3 kids. We'd just got a mortgage, and you're like considering resigning. But I just put Johnny Cash, I Won't Back Down on repeat. And I was coming from Waiuku to Auckland. And that's a long drive of 3 minutes of Johnny Cash on repeat, But I just kept it's that line, you stand me up in the gates of hell and I won't back down. And I thought, what a line to write. Imagine how hard that must be in reality, to stand in front of whatever those gates of hell represent. And by no means was I standing in front of a gate of hell, but I'm like, maybe that's just a little micro example that if I let that moment own me, what else am I prepared to give? So I just did that, and the next day, well, not the next day, you got to give 4 weeks notice, but for those 4 weeks I was emailing everyone, do you need videos? And because I had taken so much time during that job to build relationships, I had all my pals that I'd made, and that carried on, still those clients are the ones that refer podcast work to me and community work. And yeah, it's funny, I never clicked that that's how it all went down. But
the asset of relationships in an organization, and people, and you're right, when you get too big you lose touch and sight of the human beings that you work with.
And I think that kind of system, the management system maybe breeds that a little bit, like you do hear stories like, we've got to push this person out, they're not right anymore, but we've got to do it the right way, the legal way. So they take them through the ringer of HR and make it difficult. And you're like, it wasn't even that bad. I'm just telling you that outside of the 8 hours that you pay me, I'm going to take time to develop these relationships. And if that means lunch with somebody, I'm arguing that that's work, and you can argue that it's not. But I think with content, I would always win that argument, because you want good stuff on camera.
Yeah.
You can't just pop someone in front of camera, and so that's what it's ultimately a gift. I love that they did that for me, because I'd never had that. I'm the youngest in my family by 10 years of, brothers and sisters. I just mentioned I struck jackpot, had a lovely mum and a rude dad to everyone but me. But that made a person who was very comfortable in a safe space. And just happened that my first unsafe space, outside of my own issues with, that kind of dyslexic, not reading the world the same as everyone else, was, just that workspace. So, yeah, it didn't take me much, and then I'm entrepreneur all of a sudden.
Yeah, man, Mr. Entrepreneur now, man. But how's it? 'Cause it must be liberating for you now, like you're just taking that leap of faith. And just obviously there's some scary moments, there's some nerves, and, because sometimes you think, I don't know what's going to happen, I don't know the outcome. So how's it been for you thus far in terms of just stepping out in faith?
Well, it's definitely been a journey or a voyage, and I think that sometimes I try and imagine, I don't know, this will sound a bit cheesy, but our great ancestors embarking on their voyages on the ocean, and probably they had to be comfortable with the idea that they were less in control than they thought. You've got so many variables, but they'd done their prep or whatever that means, and then set off and they'll work it out on the way. And so that was actually a very good way for me to think about how this might work. Like I have good intentions, I have kind of a skill set in the area, and we'll just work it out on the way. And maybe a couple key things I did that I don't know why I did them, because no one guided me that way, but I went and found a mentor. I'm 43. I didn't have my first mentor until I was 41.
Oh, wow.
right after those kind of HR moments. I was like, I got to go find someone richer than me, smarter than me, and willing to give their time, you know.
Oh, cool.
So I found that person, and it was on LinkedIn. And actually, I'll just mention his name because he's worth a Google. His name's Ulu Aiono.
Oh,
And,
yes.
Wow. You
he's
got
a
him.
bit of a heavy
He's
hitter.
awesome.
Yeah. But I just pestered him. So because I'd done podcasting, I'm way used to the idea of emailing to try and get people's time.
Yeah.
And I just did the same to him, you know. And after he'd been mentoring me for a wee bit, I said, man, why do you muck around with me? I'm just, you know, I'm an absolute nobody in terms of your world. You're a businessman. I hear how people talk about you. You know, you're shrew, you're ruthless, you're a bit like my dad. You're nice to me. And he just said, I recognize your search.
Wow.
You know? And I was like, wow, thank you.
Yeah.
You know, because you don't realize there's champions who will champion you. And his way of championing me was just like, he said to me in our first meeting, Will, what's your why? And I was like, I love my family. I like being creative. And he's like, that's not a why. So he said, you don't have a why, so you can have mine. And this is what he said. He said, your why from this day on is you want to do what you want, when you want, with who you want, as often as you want, or not.
How true is that, eh?
And he said, Will, 99% of people can't do the or not part. They have to say yes. So what you want, when you want, as often as you want, with whoever you want or not. And I said, that's awesome, Ulu, but that one person I can't do that to is my wife, you know? And he says, no, that's fine. They sit in a different category. And I said, oh, cool. But that's been the basic operating model. You know, you could maybe think of that in a tyrannical way, but I've just tried to think of it in a good way. You know, so what do you want to do? Well, who do you want to do it with? How often do you want to do it? Who, you know, when can you say no? And the answer is you have to say no when you need to. But I never got taught that.
Yeah.
You know, I feel incredible pressure to say yes. You know, so it was a huge lesson for me. And I wouldn't say it's like the main thing I think about every day, but certainly I think about it at least once a week. Am I doing what I want with who I want as often as I want, you know, or not? And for the most part, yes.
Yeah.
You know, so that's a huge encouragement I say to people at whatever stage you're at, like just find a mentor, you know. And like seriously, I've only had one for 2 years and I'm like, man, I wish I had one at 20. Imagine how cool it would be, but maybe I wasn't in that space to look for guidance, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, so bit of a wild story, but I still catch up with that mentor. And you know, now my world is all about, okay, where are these missing bits that we have these skill sets to help, you know? And we talked about podcasting. It's not just podcasting. Podcasting encompasses like therapy,
Yeah. Absolutely.
legacy. It's a good time to hang out. You know, maybe generations before us did this at the pub, but that was great until the alcohol started ruining the moment. Now we get to have this awesome conversation, but we also build a network, and it's a great way to spend time because we know parts of this will go online. So it will loop back around, you know. And maybe just highlighting that point that when you take that step and something's there to meet you, I think you got to fight as well for it. You know, like I was very aware that don't be naive. Don't just, you know, expect like a manifestation. I've got to really push it. You know, things might manifest, but, you know, you got to find a mentor. So find someone, you know. So I really looked and then, you know, what's your business? How are you gonna pay your GST and all of that stuff? That is very overwhelming when you don't know what the heck you're doing. But yeah, I've been trading for 2 years just full time. Because you know, I mean, do you remember when you went full time into your own stuff?
Yep.
Yeah. Is it like lock in there somewhere? It's like, whoa,
Yeah.
I now pay myself.
Yeah.
That's wild.
And everything else.
Yeah.
Hey. And you're always like, when you realise that you don't get paid when you don't work, When you're sick
Absolutely.
and everyone else is having a holiday and you're like, yeah, no, we don't get paid during these times. Like, you still have to work or have some sort of backup for that or overflow for that. So yeah, those are the days that keep us on our toes.
Absolutely. I mean, talking about mentorship, Carolyn, I've told you this. You were a guest on a podcast I had, and you talked about that. You talked about kind of not planning to have enough over Christmas. And I think, you were working out, how do we buy presents? I mean, that's motivation, eh? And I bet you've thought about that every Christmas.
Yeah.
And helped it guide you to make better decisions. But like, I think, because I was coming here, I was thinking about our conversations, but like that one was a real pivotal. That was like 2 years ago. So I think I was going through that HR stuff.
Oh, wow.
When I was talking to you. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so like, that's why I say I'm not joking when I was really listening, because I was trying to work out, is it worth it? And even though you were kind of like, that was bringing up emotions in you, I still got the feeling that it's worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. Would I do it again and again and again in 5 different lifetimes? Yep. And like there are times where I'm like, not going to say the actual word. This is stressing me out. Like, this is stressing me out. I'm like missing deadlines and da-da-da-da-da. I'm, carrying too much and then I'm like, but I love it. There's always the but at the end. Would you change it? Nah.
Yeah.
I actually like this. I don't know
chaos,
if it's, I actually, it's chaotic.
It is chaotic.
Buzzy.
It is well, because obviously there's highly stressful times where you think, oh my gosh, what am I doing? There are times when you feel tired, I don't want to do this, you're totally exhausted, why am I doing this again? And so you just need a bit of a reminder. But when you think back and you sit there and think, my gosh, this is what I want to do. I want to do. I don't want to be anywhere else. This is all I want to do, regardless of the stress and the hard times. But I'm here where I'm doing something that I actually love to do.
Absolutely.
And that's what pushes us. There's many times, early hours of the morning, and there's sometimes like, oh gosh, I can't go to bed. Oh, these bills, all that kind of stuff. And then you think, my gosh, I wouldn't change it for anything else. This is, and it's all about just biting down on the mouthpiece and just going, just keep going.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. It's and you hear people talk about that all the time, but it's hard. Probably as someone, like I was mentioning, I don't know where I sit faith-wise, but that feels like the closest I can, you've got to really believe that there's a spot for you.
Yeah.
And you've got to be the one to initiate it. Probably like the, excuse me, I don't know, but the let Jesus in your heart. You've got to initiate that.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing.
You got to keep him there.
Yeah, with that principle that you believe you got something to offer and you're going to work till 2 a.m. trying to make that true,
Yeah.
Because you're right. Like I can think even last night, I was like, why is my shoulder sore? And it's because I was sitting editing on a, tiny little computer at like 2 o'clock. And I was like, oh, that's why it's sore. All right, keep going because get the edit done. Then go to bed. And then today I was like, why am I tired? Oh, because I was at 2 o'clock in the morning, But it's awesome because, the content I was editing was something I really care about, and it's like it's actually for another friend of mine, Alpha Mayava is his name. And this is another person that popped in my life. So he actually, it's a perfect time where we're doing this podcast because this dude just took me around the Pacific to film a documentary.
Wow.
So I've just got back from the Solomon Islands a couple of days ago. And before that, we were in Niue, Tonga, Cook Islands, Vanuatu. And this has been going on since November. And I just set out to do a podcast, these campfire chats. And all of a sudden, this guy Alpha, he rings me and says, hey, I love it. I want you to do my documentary. Follow me around the Pacific. I'm like, okay. And
that's so
awesome.
Cool.
I couldn't have strategized that. I couldn't have thought that would be one of the things that came up. But I just also think that's the unfair bit. Now that I'm following this path, it's helping me answer other questions. So when I was in the Cooks, I met a couple of the people and I was like, hey, how do you find out where you come from?
Wow.
And they're like, oh, well, first of all, you got to come back.
Mm.
I'm like, okay, that's a big one, you know, because you can't do everything on ChatGPT. You know, you got to go and be with. But
Wow.
it just, it's wild. So like in July or June this year, Campfire Studios puts out an 8-part documentary called Instruments of the Moana.
Oh, beautiful.
And this is a documentary about the instruments that were either lost or eroded or erased through colonialism. It talks about the story of the nose flute and, you know, the other instruments in the Pacific. And it's like, you know, remember my big thing was I don't know where I fit. Just happened that following my path took me on a journey to literally show me, you know. So it's like, it's pretty wild.
It is wild. It's wild how things stepping out. I mean, you've talked about that it feels like it's faith, and that you're stepping out, and it's just one step at a time. But it's amazing how stepping out into the unfamiliar, on one hand, it feels like it is, but on another, it's almost like there's just this, like you've got an innate compass, that just kind of puts you out there, and if you don't follow it, you kind of miss this opportunity, and because you're in it, it just, I don't know, it's like you're meant to be there. Imagine if you'd not done it.
Yeah. It's not a nice imagination.
No, it's not.
It
doesn't compare to all this, I mean, all the stress we feel and the not so good feelings that come with running a business. They're not nice feelings, but it doesn't compare to not doing it.
Because I think you have to, you got to really consolidate that you're probably doing it for money. And I saw how that worked on lots of the previous generation. They did it for money, and you know, they self-soothed, didn't they? Through I guess that was the thriving pub scenes, and you'd handle someone's shitty workplace for a day, and you'd at least go to the pub with your pals, and you could, you know, I saw it in my dad too, you know, just like that was the way to self-medicate. Yeah, but that just had terrible other, you know, we know that, and there's, you know, literature on that. So, you know, it's like there's no way out. The only way out is to maybe take a bit more control or onus, or to believe that you can. Yeah. And I see that with the students that I work with, you know, like I want to provide a space. So the course I wrote is around them and like researching an elder in their community who they wish to learn from. Because if you think about it, it's not easy to find time with people, especially if you're young. You know, you're really dictated who's in front of you. And I hated in school that you'd have a guest speaker and they'd just you'd sit down in a giant room and they'd come and talk to you. So I was like, man, imagine if the student could ask the questions they want in an intimate space, you know, like a podcast environment. So that's what they do. To earn their 4 credits over a series of weeks, they research an elder, they develop questions, they learn how to email them and schedule. Gosh. And then the elder meets them at a, you know, place like this, an awesome studio. And they sit down, and what's even about it is normally a successful person is, you know, has the world, it's their oyster. But in a podcast studio, it's a bit of an evener, you know, because you have power in this space that I don't. And so that's a good thing, you know, and I like that the student gets a little bit of, they have a bit of mana. Yeah. And because the student has researched them, they have another advantage. So we always start it where the student asks the first question, which is a simple one, you know, can you introduce yourself? And all of a sudden you've got this adult answering a question. And so again, I didn't believe it would be really true. So I got some funding, just to be transparent, from a philanthropic outfit called J.R. Mackenzie. Oh yeah. I deeply encourage everyone to Google, especially if you're in that Indigenous Pacific space, because they're not big on reports, they're big on outcomes. And I just think that's so cool. They funded me to do a pilot program. Wow. Where I could go find students and run this idea as a test. And all I did was show them the evidence. Look, these are the young people talking. Wow. And of course I could have done it better. You know, I could have had proper surveys which said, you know, how do you feel before and after? But I had the evidence to show that there was impact. And then from that's led to other funding to develop, you know, this course. But I never thought that I would do that, because I couldn't even really read at school. So what the hell have I got to do with going back into schools
Yeah.
and saying you can do that? But of course, the outcome is my exact experience. Now you can earn a credit by not having to read and write. And now you can, and then all these other things have popped up, like the people they're interviewing in our test trials were their grandparents.
Wow.
So they have this digital archive. And I started to say to the students, like, you're going to be way more happy if you go viral in your family. So you'll go viral when that person passes away and you were responsible for holding that information.
Gosh.
Yeah. And it's not a nice thought, but I think it's a worthy use of the word viral, because we all want to go viral.
Yeah.
But how cool would it be to go viral in your family? The relief of knowing that you at least have that story recorded.
Yeah, and you captured it. But
Yeah.
you're also doing you're also installing in some really essential skills around communication.
Yeah.
Because we're losing that, aren't we?
Absolutely.
Just that generational conversation and our young people being able to learn how to ask those questions.
100%.
I mean, that's a whole nother skill set that
Yep.
has been overlooked.
And also, we've overlooked the fact that we think because young people are on their devices that they're intimate with who they are, but at least 99% of the students I've worked with, you know how you find it hard to hear your own voice? They're mortified by hearing their own voice. And so I've got to work a whole session to say, like, we've got to get past that. We're not here to hear our own voice. We're here to, like, work out, have we asked the question? We learn a bit of editing so we can chop out bits like a cough or something. And once they're over that, it's not so much about, like, how am I coming across? It's just like, that's me. And I'm okay to exist like that,
That's cool.
Yeah, I couldn't get over it because I'm like, out of everyone, you would think young people would be awesome at that. But they must be awesome at, like, having the chat in their head versus actually hearing themselves.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of the mental health conversation,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Self-esteem, all of
absolutely,
that stuff.
absolutely.
Which is
And
core to that.
And so what I love the most is we have the output that they export, and then the job is they have to email the guest back and say, here's our recording. And that's their way of publishing.
Wow.
Because the other ways you can earn credits for that type of stuff is too much about, like, what we do. We have to publish it online to get views. And I think that's okay. But I don't reckon it's good for young people. Ultimately, you're archiving to YouTube. It's no difference if you're archiving to Google Drive,
Yeah.
and sending an email. So there's heaps of soft skills too, research, emailing.
Yeah.
But if you write a course about research and emailing, no student's going to enjoy it, So I'm just, like, embedding those even the counselling part.
Yeah.
I'm trying to engage Auckland Uni to do a research thing to say, like, what is happening for these students when they're talking.
Yeah.
And I suspect heaps, but I can't prove it.
Yeah. Yeah. And you've got a conditioned space for it, haven't you? To be able to, it's almost like lights on, cameras on.
That's right.
And then all the noise shuts down.
Yes.
And then it's just like we're having the earphones on right now. I can't hear anything else around me. My thoughts are gone.
Yeah.
And it's just you, and that's it. And so the conditioning of the space does something, I think it's better than sitting in a room with a counsellor. Absolutely.
And look how much, we've made a space that has all the nice things, like a campfire does, light, warmth, or cool if we're sweaty like me, safe. We kind of know the variables. And, like, I wonder if that's what kind of counselling's supposed to be.
It's supposed to maybe. I've only been to one session.
Yeah, but that's why we don't want to go, because who wants to go to
I didn't go back, Will.
So you started a podcast.
And it was in a caravan.
Really?
Oh my gosh.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It was a caravan and I was like, and then he diagnosed me and I was like, that's not your job.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I imagine if you were going to think about, like, what would be, what's a good counselling, or it would be all those things we described.
Yeah.
To help you encourage. Surely you're your own answer.
You are. Absolutely.
Yeah, but you've got to, like you've helped me do today, I'm like, wow, this is actually really awesome for me because I'm hearing myself talk about myself in a positive way,
Yeah.
not the other will that I have in my mind, which is like, how do we do things better, you know? Yeah, so
It's cool.
thanks for this free session.
No, thank you. And I think what you're doing in the schools is amazing, Will, because I can imagine there's young people. Obviously, social media is massive, and they're on the devices many times.
Absolutely.
And like you were saying, there's a lot of our young people have to deal with a lot of things in this day and age. And then you have throw in social media, all that kind of stuff, and then cyberbullying, all that stuff, and just what you were saying in terms of it's in their head. A lot of the things they say to themselves is in their head. But you can imagine them, the light bulb kind of switching when they're able to verbalize what's actually in their heads.
Absolutely.
And for you to start to do this podcast and a course for these young people, imagine the growth, but also I guess in terms of humanity, because sometimes people are texting each other and they just sit across the other room.
100%.
But imagine the face-to-face opportunities that they have. Like, wow. And the self-esteem, like Karen was saying, the self-esteem, the confidence. And you talk about being viral. Obviously, people think, viral, let's just be viral on TikTok or YouTube, whatever. But I love the fact when you said viral in the family, in the generations. And, people talk about legacy. People talk about legacy. Oh, man, I knew this about this person. But when you capture that person actually talking about what they do and the successes, man, that in itself just encapsulate. It's kind of like a time capsule we took early on that you can bring it out the archive and bring it out. Hey, this is the legacy, and this is from the horse's mouth.
Absolutely.
Listen to it. It's like, man, bro, that's amazing, and it's for our young people, but even for the person who's being interviewed.
Absolutely,
that's so
they
much
have
freedom.
their moment too, because they realise that it's a fair system that old people are supposed to mentor young people, but there's not enough spaces for that. So what happens is old people bully young people because you're supposed to, in work, tell them what to do, right? And it's a bad system. If you can have an even system, which it's supposed to be, I'm sure our ancient systems were more like that, where there was everyone won.
Yeah.
It wasn't just babysitting. I enjoyed being with my grandmother when I did because there was other things we could do. She mentored me in other ways, and I hope that type of stuff comes out of the work we're all doing, because we can do that now. We do have the technology, and like I said, no one's really clicked that we're actually doing legacy work as well. And it's weird because we shouldn't be really interviewing us because we're all still young enough. We should be doubling down on the knowledge holders who have the true wisdoms.
Yeah.
But we've somehow got this weird link where, like you said, it feels a bit embarrassing to ask. So we've just got to push through that a little bit. And I encourage everyone to, even if it's just to turn your phone on record and just, don't say, tell me about your life. It's too big. Say, what was life like growing up when you were young? And just let them start talking. Just do one of those a day. The next one can be, hey, what's a funny story from when you were, young, or what did you eat when you were young,
I always crack up and I always tell Pete about my grandma because she had one story.
Yeah.
One story. And she told it every day. And I know it off by heart, man. Like when I grew up and she started to talk about it, I'd be like, oh my gosh, stop.
What was it?
It was about how she looked after her mum and how her mum blessed her, and she was dying in her arms and all of that stuff. Cries at the same spot. Like she had that story on repeat, man. And so we didn't need to record it, but I love what you just said there is, I don't know what other questions. Oh, we did ask her questions, but she was really closed.
Yeah.
She's a clever lady, man. She never exposed the other side of her, just what she wanted us to hold, which, now in my 40s, she's passed on. I'm glad she gave us that bit.
Yeah.
I'm glad she did give us that bit. And I wish I did record her telling that same story because, it just reminds you of who she is and, how she perceives herself.
Absolutely.
And she perceived herself.
Yeah, and
blessed.
You have when you record someone, you have different mannerisms. So she might have said the same story, but she might snort at a certain time, or do her lip a certain way, and those are the things that we forget until we watch it.
Yeah,
like I have a recording of my mum, and it was just talking about. I think the story she was telling me about is her dad came from the Cook Islands to New Zealand to help build the harbour bridge, and he lined all the kids up and said, "What do you want me to bring back?" And everyone said, "Shoes, shoes, shoes." And she said, "A box of apples." And she told me, I don't know why I said that, but I wanted a box of apples.
Oh.
And so when he came back, he brought a box of apples. But during that story, my daughter, who was a baby then, was crying, and my mum said to something like, "Come here, darling." But you know how she would always say darling, but now I have her saying that.
Oh, wow.
You know, so it's like those little things that you
Yeah.
never know you're going to record.
Yeah.
Their mannerisms, maybe. And so, you know, when I've had people with their grandmothers, and if the grandmother's a bit sick and coughing, like they say, "Excuse me." And I'm saying, no, we want all of it. I even want to remember how you cough, you know, and that's a weird thing, I guess, until they're not there, and you'll take anything.
Yeah.
You'll take a snort, cough. Same story.
That's cool. I love that you do that, Will, and it just really shows your just your heart for the work that you do and the content that you capture, that it's not just another video that you've got to put up.
Yeah.
You know, you actually are trying to capture the essence of the person so that their memory is kept alive.
Absolutely. And I had to test myself because I had done so much podcasting. I thought my ego might not let me sit on the other side of the table where I'm not on camera.
Yeah.
But it was cool. You know, I got the same buzz about being in the room recording and hearing the story being told, and I wasn't part of it, but I was part of it. I was just in the corner. Yeah. You know, which was one of the most, probably like a campfire, you know, like maybe two people are chatting, but there's other two people there who that story is, they're imagining. Yeah. You know, they're thinking. And I wonder if that's what people like about podcasts, you know. People might be listening to this in the bus or on the way home from a shitty day at work, and you're like, oh, cool, I'm hearing this story and it feels like I'm there. Yeah. But I know I'm not, but I'll follow up on that thing they said, you know, and yeah, who knows?
That's a good question. Why do we listen to podcasts, and why do we listen to, I mean, we like to be told stories. Hey, we like to hear stories, and like, and you like to follow the journey of the story. Yeah. Like I find myself watching 2-hour podcasts. I'm like, I can't believe I just watched that.
I know.
But I normally put it on 1.5 speed. Just because I want to get to the point, but I end up just watching the whole thing because the stories just intrigue me.
I mean, I don't know. What is it for you guys? For me, it just gives me a chance to not be thinking too big, you know, and you can zoom in on things you're interested about and learn a bit more. So at the moment, it's like, what is this whole business world? You know, go find those podcasts with people who talk about that. And maybe there's a little nugget in there. Like I was listening to one, and the person on it said, you know, if you want to be rich or whatever, and I was like, oh, here we go again. They're like, make a list, write it all down, put a deadline to it. And it was all very logical. And I'm like, oh, that would make total sense. That if you want to be wealthy, write down what you want. Yeah. And then put a deadline to it. And he said, that's an action plan. Now follow that. I was like, cool. Yeah. So you feel cheesy though, eh? Because like, I'm sure I'm the only one here. Have I got it on me? Oh no, embarrassing.
Have you got the list?
And I even called it. Here's my little rich list.
Oh wow!
See? So
gosh,
on
good
here
on you.
is my little rich list. My little.
That's mean.
And see, I'm not someone who's done that, but because I'm trying to follow that journey, I'm treating it like it's a belief, a faith. You know. Yeah. So hard case. Maybe.
And it gives you a tunnel focus, right? Because you can end up just going, do I want to be a good person? Do I want to help the world? Do I want to be da 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 da? It actually just brings you in, and it reminds you of, hey, remember what your rich list is,
and helps you what to say no to. Yeah, because everything in my list has to do with like it has to be a good human interaction. You know, so I think that's gonna drive a lot of the work I do. If it's AI, then how do we put human back into AI? You know, if it's with communities, okay, how do we make sure they're meaningful, safe moments? You know, and because I just podcast is the vehicle I'm using, I'll mask that in all different ways, as long as it revolves around people talking. Yeah. You know, and I haven't seen anything better in our modern world than just a good old chat. You know,
hard on, man.
It's weird, eh? It's really weird.
I think we make it so complicated, well, we just, it has to be something else, therapy, which is all good. But I think just having a chat, a good old chat, and sometimes we can just alleviate some of the stress sometimes, and even just makes people feel good about themselves sometimes. And just go back to the question you were just talking about in terms of the podcast and why do we listen to podcasts. I think sometimes in terms of what we do with Mandate, it's obviously the backdrop is about encouraging and inspiring men of all walks to a purpose-driven life. But sometimes I just like to listen to, because sometimes there's been in certain podcasts there's a bit of you can see yourself in that person that's quite relatable. You think, I get that, I understand that, I like that, that relates to me. Hence why we do what we do.
Yeah.
And we get a lot of feedback. Is that, I relate to that person. I understand that. I've been in his shoes. I know what he's talking about. And so it's cool to kind of get that feedback. But also for ourselves, with Brad, myself, Jay, and Charles, it's about kind of seeing ourselves in these different stories and all the different guests that come on. And just like yourself, I can see I can just listening. Man, I see that. I know that, man. I feel that. I will.
Yeah.
And so, man, it's incredible. The journey you've got undertaken right now. It's beautiful, man. It's beautiful. I love that in terms of going back to the young people and the older generation. I love that you're also bridging the gap between the intergenerations, and making our older folks feel like, oh man, this is cool that I'm able to have this chat with this young person, and vice versa. And so, bro, what you're doing, the work that you're doing is man props to you, bro. Props.
Thank you, and also it's very rewarding. Because one of having that gift of being raised, let's just say, without too much trauma, and I know I'm lucky, so I don't sit here skiting. I know plenty of people have shit they're dealing with, but I like the fact that I know, and I'll make my legacy prove that when I'm interacting with young people, it's on the correct terms, where I'm just trying to have a good interaction, so they're like, that was a cool older person.
Yeah.
They didn't need anything less or more from me because of their life, and we've all had those teachers who bent those boundaries. They were trying to get something for them, and that's not appropriate. Maybe if they're related to you, okay, but they were there to provide information and to provide it in a way, and I just take that really serious, so, and the unfair bit is, I think if we follow those paths too, they can be lucrative. So you think to yourself, how can it be that it's all there? You get to do what you want with who you want as often as you want. Yeah. It's going to bring more money because you're motivated. People like what you're doing. They're going to share the word. Yeah. And it will create these awesome feedback loops. The only thing I can think it's similar to is how we talk about negative mental health. There's a negative mental health feedback loop, and it goes down and down and down and down. And it must be true. If that's true, the opposite must be true. Yeah. And so I think it's unfair because we don't champion the other side of that. Yeah. We don't say that there's a positive feedback loop. Yeah. And that I think it's unfair because how can more opportunities come to those who already have opportunities? And I think the answer is, that it's because you love it heaps and you're willing to give extra and it doesn't feel just like work. Yeah. So I don't know if there's something in there, but I'm just trying to really find a way to articulate that it's worth the risk of chasing your own passion because you might just realize your positive feedback loop will do the opposite to the negative one, which we always talk about, Yeah. What do you think?
Well, I mean, just maybe 5 seconds ago, I was just thinking to myself, have we overdone trauma?
I mean, if you want to keep thinking about it, maybe.
I think we have. There's so much focus on, there's a focus on correlating trauma and success, and I'm like, yeah, that's cool, but there's a lot of success from people who have not that much trauma. Yep. And who've been fully supported, have had amazing parents, great upbringing, and we don't hoon on that story enough.
That's right.
We're just, this person was an orphan, this person was da-da-da-da-da, and then we're almost glamorizing that as opposed to the fundamentals that we all need to gravitate towards because we're parents and we need to be like, okay, the little good things we do are good.
Yeah.
They're not that bad.
Absolutely.
But you're right, though. That positive loop that you're talking about, it's got a quiet voice. Hey, it's got a quiet voice and we need to amplify it so that other people can hear it. Because there's a lot of people looking in who are in their jobs unhappy, and I'm not saying they all want to, be entrepreneurial or run their own business, but they might be just going, how do I switch it up?
Yeah.
How do I find my own positive loop where I am? And again, that voice is so quiet. And media, and like I'm talking mainstream media, who control quite a bit of that mental health narrative, which a lot of it is not cool. I don't know if you know, but New Zealand and America are two of the only countries in the world that, talk about pharmaceuticals and all of that stuff. And then you kind of go, why are they doing that?
Yeah.
And in order to back that up, they've got to go back to trauma talk, and everyone's depressed and everyone's anxious and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, okay. But there's a lot of people that aren't.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of people that are not, that are doing really, really well. Like, how about we balance that conversation?
Yeah.
How about we bring alongside another narrative? But
100%.
I love what you've just said. We've got to find that positive loop, and we've got to amplify the sound.
Or the other one will prevail,
Yeah.
But I get it. It's way easier probably to identify with the things that we don't like, but I'm sure psychology says that if you just keep thinking about it, it's just, it'll stew in your mind, and the less you talk about it, the more you stew about it, and on and on and on. And
it takes more effort to be positive than negative, and we live in a society where that negative stuff is quite often nudged, quite often shaped.
Yeah.
And so for us to kind of get in that negative feedback loop, it's almost comfort because everyone else is in it, society's sitting in it. So for you to get out of it, it requires a push.
Yeah.
And that's why it's a quiet voice. I wondered if more people had that kind of positive loop talk, most of us would be. Hey, jumping higher.
Maybe that's why we like podcasts, because there is a tendency to kind of try to be the best version of yourself, or at least aim higher.
Yeah.
Then, because that's just what we think a podcast is. It's coming to try and be, interesting and authentic, but not in I hardly ever see podcasts, that I enjoy anyway, where there's just a bitching session.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are them.
There probably is.
Yeah. Maybe we should do that.
I think they're on another channel.
Or like the news, and I worked in the news, and I still don't understand why we were just reporting on bad stuff.
Is it ratings?
I think it's that, it's the same thing the algorithm and social media pushes you towards, that part of the limbic system that is there to be triggered. To be worried, and that, if there's a worse thing happening over there, maybe my life's not so bad. But
because who funds them? No, pharmaceutical companies? No, just kidding. Kidding.
Here we go.
Hey.
Make this a clip. Make this a clip. Viral. No, but and the funny thing about TV and stuff, they hold lots of power. Well, not now, because it's a product people don't want, but they're actually nice people, so there's this weird negative feedback loop within that system.
The system, keyword is the system.
It's a weird thing. I remember one of my jobs was working for Campbell Live, the John Campbell show at TV3, and it was my job to make the advert, the promo for it. And I had just started there, and I thought, oh, cool, I make these adverts. And I'd come from TVNZ, where we make, adverts for The Walking Dead and cool, fun shows. So it was your job to amplify it. So I tried to do the same thing with that news show, but I had forgotten that you got to be honest, real. So I tried to make a trailer for that episode. And ages ago, there was a story about Kim.com. Remember he was in the news every night?
Yep.
And it was the raid on his house. And I thought, that's an awesome trailer. So I found the footage that, we had got in the news system, and I chopped it all up, and I thought it would be cool, in movies how it's like 724, we're going in, go. But you can't have those call signs on TV. They're secret police codes, 721 or whatever it is. But for us, it's just like a movie. So I put that on, and it got onto TV, and of course I got in real big trouble for it. But I remember looking online and seeing people typing, classic John Campbell, like a little bit like, look at the media shaping it this way again. And it was just a silly bugger making a mistake,
Wow,
So I think it's a lot of that too, where people just are just ignorant, and like I was ignorant, I should have read the manual properly, which said, don't put that in, and I should have had managers and teams who would look at that before it goes on TV.
Oh, wow.
But that's okay, because John Campbell was actually a really nice guy, and he called the judge when it went to court and said,
Oh, gosh, it went that far.
it's just a dude who was making a mistake, and don't worry, But it was pretty hefty. Like, I was a bit worried, but I still thought it was a cool promo,
Yeah.
And that was my job. I make promos. But, like, ultimately, why was someone with my skill set making a story about a dude getting his house raided? Where was the cool story about the stuff we're talking about, And that's why they've got a product that no one wants, because that's what used to work, and now people get that online.
Yeah.
So if they would ever come to me for a critique, it would be like, you should have doubled down on the podcast so we didn't have to. We were all in different industries.
Yeah.
But that space was left for authentic stories, and, good on us for capturing that market share.
Oh, wow.
I wish the funding came with it, though. They get heaps of funding, TV.
Oh, I
So
bet.
if it does change, let's hope podcasts get way more funding.
Yeah, because you asked the question earlier, what do you think is the future? Like, where is the podcast channel moving? Well, how do you sort of foresee that?
Well,
Or what's
probably
the
that
involvement?
podcast will evolve into something else, because it's had a 10-year run at the moment. Now I reckon we've kind of, I'll probably eat my words on this, but I think we're kind of peaking. Most places now have the multi-camera setup, the technology to cut those, like a little mini TV studio, and everything sounds good and looks great. And, I don't know how scalable that is, or, but who knows? Maybe we're just at the front end of a blast of Kiwi podcasts. That would be cool,
Yeah.
It'd be cooler if, like, Creative New Zealand and, that funding that traditionally went to big media, newspapers, and that they would double down on it, but they'd have to do it in a way which is like this, which is, you've got to let people talk.
Yeah.
You've got to be okay with them making mistakes on camera. We will eat our words because we're not broadcast professionals, but that's what I think a positive feedback loop needs, is people willing to, make those kind of small errors, and I have no problem in 10 years if I was wrong about something to say I was wrong about it,
Yeah.
But there seems to be a big push, if you're public or government or something at that level, you've got to pretend like you always have your stuff together.
Yeah.
And I think a podcast affords people that chance to, just, I don't know, be a bit more vulnerable, and
then have the production team talking over the top. I love that. When you watch Shay Shay and Joe Rogan and Patrick Big David, like these guys in the backdrops, they're talking in, you're like, you can do that.
Yeah.
That's cool.
100%.
Which just goes back to what with Campfire you're saying, because when you talk about Campfire, just in my mind I'm thinking about Campfire, obviously camp, and then you have marshmallows and people just singing songs. You got the guitar there, the bonfire, and then everyone not saying kumbaya, but just everyone's just having a good time, and everyone feels safe.
Yeah.
And I think that's what podcasts do. Or if it's a good podcast, they make you feel safe enough to be vulnerable, but also safe enough for you to be authentic and to put your guard down.
Yeah.
And you're like, I don't have to like I got everything all together. I don't have to sound like I'm this person and that person. I just can just be myself, in the midst of these other guys. And even if I don't do them from above, so
That's right.
man, I still feel safe, and so I'm just going to be myself. And I think that's the beauty of what we do as podcasters. People come in, they feel safe, they share their story, and then the hope is that it's beneficial and it's rich for someone who needs to hear that at that time and at that moment.
Yeah,
And
100%.
so, yeah,
and
man.
like, what we need is the study on, like, let's just take Mandate Podcast. I bet you there's way more tangible evidence that this podcast has had more beneficial impact than like other things produced at a higher governmental level.
Yeah.
You know, the fact that this can be taken in a pocket, can be listened to anywhere, that there's no bottlenecks because most people can have access to the internet, you know, and they want to see these clips from people that they look up to but have never had the chance to speak their minds.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's actually really bad that we can't prove that we have to just look at things like views or engagement, you know, that there should absolutely be a way, just like TV held the ratings, you know, we should be, like, this should just unlock. And I've actually said it to MPP and Ministry of Pacific Peoples, and when I've had these meetings, I've said, what you keep asking me to apply for things that I've created, what you should be funding me for is for the space to do more.
Yeah.
You know, to have it open 8 hours a day. Imagine what we could do. Imagine
Yeah.
if this space and our space was open 8 hours a day with the idea of recording.
Just filling it up.
It'd just be like they were paying the wages through their funding. Great. Okay, so now let's dream about what we'd do. We could have a school visit every week. We could have elders coming from the local homes.
Yeah.
We could facilitate conversations with, you know, local police. I don't know, whatever.
Well, it's almost, I mean, you just as you described that, I can almost see like this is the new family photo.
Yeah.
You know how people
Absolutely.
take the family photos and you queue up and you've got that lady who does the baby photos and stuff like that. And
Absolutely.
this is the new, this is the modern version of that.
100%.
A 3D version of a family having a conversation with somebody, prompting some of that family value stuff, bringing it to the table to remind them all, this is who we are as a whānau.
Absolutely.
I think that's what you're describing to me.
And the
is-
products you could create, you know, you could have a lawyer that you hire and they come in and they do a virtual will. You know, hey,
Oh,
you
wow.
want to, who do you want?
Gosh,
ask
that's
them,
next level.
well, you know, or like anything
cool.
like that. But because that's what hasn't,
You don't need
for
to
the-
sign anything for
that's
that,
right.
It's
You
all
could
here.
just, you know, and I mean, we have a mutual friend in Akure and he tells me about all the stuff going on in Samoa because someone dies and the knowledge is gone. And then who owns that land and that, you know, and where do
Yeah.
we fit? It's a real big problem, you know.
But you know what? In what you're saying, because you don't know if that piece of paper has been forced a signature on,
Absolutely.
but on video you can capture when somebody didn't want to sign.
Absolutely. You know, prove it. Say it to this camera.
See that they were like absolutely pressured.
Oh, yeah.
No, but you're right. I mean, this is, my gosh.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's
Is it on your rich list?
Oh,
Write it down, write it down.
Put that
Here you go.
add it to the rich list.
no, I've got my third thing on the rich list is buy a Tesla by mid 2024. Standard black. You know, I want it to drive itself in the motorway. I think that'll be so cool. What is on here? Okay, so are there still goals if I read them? I guess they are. So I've got Campfire Studio to earn $1 million gross.
Oh, man.
I don't know how to get there.
Nice.
But
Yeah,
I just
it's
thought I'd
written
write it down. And the ways I'm going to do that is filming and editing videos and podcasts, podcast production, service provider for government, NGO charities,
Yeah.
funding for projects, you know, so I better hurry up because it's already March.
The 100 days is finished.
Yeah, and then I've got a couple other ones, you know, like I want to build an app which families can record their stories,
Oh, wow.
you know, and
Can you share that app guy with me when you find him?
I had to go on the carnivore diet, but that hasn't happened yet.
Bro, I've just started it this
Have
week.
you?
I've just started this week.
How's
man.
it
second
going,
week,
man?
isn't
How's
it?
going?
Second week. It's been good, man. It's been good.
Awesome.
Really good. So I'm really feeling, exhausted right now. no, I feel real good. I feel really good.
It's funny because you got chips here.
That's
and
for
they're
you.
anti-carnivore.
This be
Oh,
food
no.
for you.
That should be jerky or like salami. Eh? I bet you if it was, your guests would be like, you know, going harder. Oh, that's awesome. Oh, well, keep me in the loop because I'm close. It's on the list to do.
Oh, good on you, man. Awesome. No, yeah, I'll definitely keep you in the loop and give you some, I don't know, maybe some books out there and some information. So but I've done it before, so it does work. It's really good.
But this time around, you've tried someone else, eh?
Yeah.
You mean like a different system?
Yeah. So it's kind of like carnival / added fruits to it, kind of more of the natural sugars, more of the natural carbs, or better carbs.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been really good thus far. So bro, whatever you need, man, just
Thanks,
let me know.
man. I appreciate that because that's a tricky one, eh? Like I've spent my whole life battling with eating. You know, I guess it came from my mum because food wasn't guaranteed, and she can remember being hungry as a kid, and so she thought, I'm going to feed that one, and then she would say to me, "Sorry, dude, you know, I fed you too much," you know, and I'm like, "Yeah, mum." Like everyone just says, "Oh, can't you control what you eat?" I'm like, "No, I get real hungry," and it's real frustrating when people are like, "Just say no to chips." You know, when you're raised to be the eater, those are traumas you can't get rid of. My latest thought on that is, I just want to earn enough money and I'll go buy one of those gastric bypasses. Just cut half away. Don't make me fight with it. Just make me not hungry.
That'll traumatize you, I'm sure, because you're...
Well, that's what everyone says. They're like, you might not like being Will, who's the big Will. I'm like, no, I'm pretty sure I will like being Slim Will too. Yeah. So who knows? Next time I'll come back, you'll know if all my dreams have come true because I would have been able to afford my $20,000 gastric bypass.
We've had some secrets around that. You can get it cheaper in different countries. I'll let you know after the podcast.
Cool.
I don't want to promote
That's
it because...
the one everyone was listening to. Please go into it more.
That'll be in another podcast. Oh, wow.
Yeah, awesome.
No, I think the evolution of podcasts is interesting conversation.
Where do you think it's going to go?
I mean, I'm just trying to get my head around this, aren't we? Like, just trying to get...
I can't believe your space. Like, I don't know if you ever show it on the podcast.
No.
Because we only see what's on those lenses. But like when we're talking about facilitating people and spaces, like you've got room out there, it's like, wow, that's bucket list stuff for me to have a space where... And, you know, you took that plunge. You got the space, and so you can work from here, you can podcast from here, and
cry from here
on camera.
Cry from here because it costs a lot, guys. Looking for sponsors.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. No. I mean, like I love hearing you because the intricacies of podcast production is not just here in the recording, it's also post-production that Brad does quite a bit of.
Yep.
And then it's not just then doing post-production, there's a whole heap of thinking that goes into it, and the science behind it and understanding behaviours, but also, you know, it's not just about the clicks, it's about respecting the people who've come to the podcast to share their stories, share, you know, their heart, their mana, the vulnerable conversations like that. And like Patia said, some of that stuff is gold. Like you can kind of get you can feel it when you're hearing it.
Well,
they need to be packaged properly.
And I saw, like I reshared some stuff from Efeso, and I think you guys did too.
Yeah.
And like, even though I had conflicted thoughts about it, I was more proud that I was part of a small cohort of people who were willing to ask someone like that, who we put, like they're like the Batmans of our society, eh? You know, they hold the you know, the figure of what is possible, and you know, to know that we were just by whatever things brought us together, we've got those insights, you know, and I still haven't quite got my head around it. You know, it's a real wild journey. And I remember I got funding from Levar to do a podcast around suicide prevention, and that's been a really interesting voyage. But we got season 2 coming out in a month or two, and he's one of the guests, and we had a koha to give him, right? And he said, "Well, guess what? After all these engagements I've had in my whole life, you're the first person to give me money for my time."
Wow.
And I just thought, can I swear on this podcast? Not really, eh?
Yeah, you
No,
can.
I just thought, fuck
can,
you to all of the people who hold wealth in those other pockets.
Yeah.
How many things has a vessel been to?
Yeah.
And they just expected him to drive there. You know, yes, they might have given him, I don't know, but like we gave him $800. We gave all our guests $800. Like as a business person, it was really hard for me to give everyone $800. But that was just very important to me because, you know, they came and I thought this might improve the chances of getting guests, you know. But I just couldn't get my head around all of the I Googled, you know, all of the things he'd done, and I'm like, man, that's what's wrong, is that other people got funding to do their thing and they could have shared some of that, and that would have made giant differences to, it would have also set precedents that, you know, as the world wants to know more about Indigenous, it should be pay to play,
Yeah.
you know. So I don't quite know what I'm saying there, but I just was very shocked
Yeah.
when
yeah.
he told me that was the first
Time had received money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and like that burden shouldn't have been on us as whatever we're trying to do.
Yeah.
You know, we're just trying to work out if the system works. And so I also think that's why you're seeing those traditional models fail, because they get, like, don't worry about $800, they're talking millions, and they mine that dude hundreds of times.
Yeah. Gosh.
You know? So I think it's fair that they should reinvent what they do, and if they want some help structuring it, come talk to us.
Yeah,
We've
yeah.
been welcome to our
Absolutely.
world. You know?
Yeah. That's
Share the
right.
love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm glad that you're putting it out there.
Yeah, well, probably, you know, I actually don't feel that bad for my colleagues because they're forced now to do what I've done.
Yeah.
They've got amazing skills, you know, go use them. You'll be fine.
Yeah. Cool. That's a good message for them.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've told all of them too.
Oh,
I rang
yeah.
all my ones and said, you know, why are you doing that? You know, you got better things to do than to say how many people died in Gaza. You know,
Yeah.
the world already knows. We've seen it this morning online. You know, I don't need to wait till 6 to hear it again. Go and
Oh, yeah, and
make a graphic up for a community that's having a fundraiser, you know?
and every channel says the same thing.
Absolutely.
God, all of them, the Sky channels, every channel that you can turn on just
Yeah.
says exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
So where to for them, do you think?
Well,
Is
who knows? I mean, you know, what I don't know. I don't know how power holds power. So at the moment, they'll reinvent another system that holds the power, meaning the budget.
Yeah.
You know, so if you ask me what I'd like to happen, I'd like them to look at people who are doing this for little to no money. I'd put us in that category,
Yeah.
and to help design, you know, like we've been talking about. If you've ever been to TVNZ or TV3, they're amazing spaces.
Yeah.
They've built to impress. And I have always been kind of like just annoyed that they're not used enough. You know, we've got this digital gear that can be used 1,000,000 times before you need to replace it.
Yeah.
Maybe. So that's what I'd do. I would still do or whatever you want to do, but I'd offer every podcaster free space in prime
Yeah.
location.
God, that would be
You know?
awesome.
Imagine if you had you could either bring your own crew or they would have dedicated crew, and you could just come in and use it for free. I reckon that, you know, you'd get way more opportunities, and they talk about democracy, you know, the fourth estate. Well, you know, let people democratize like podcasts do.
Yeah.
You know, stop. But there's really bad habits. You know, there's real bad habits. People feeling like comms people. You know, and I know lots of comms people, and they're good people, but it's their jobs to guide the narrative. And I'm like, I'm not convinced we're going to end up anywhere better.
Yeah.
You know,
And if you let those guys loose into this space,
absolutely.
oh, that's a bit scary.
And I've done a couple jobs where the higher end clients have someone come, and you know, I won't mention names because I'm trying not to burn bridges, but one of the comms people that were there stopped the podcast and said, can you stop saying so much? Because it might be distracting to the viewer. You know,
Oh,
and I was
wow.
like, you're fucking distracting to us. You know?
Gosh.
my
I
goodness.
promise that's my second F-bomb. I'm stopping now.
No, all good.
Hey, you've behaved yourself.
Yeah. And I don't swear, but I actually thought I should try and be a little bit more forthcoming with my views, especially here,
Yeah, absolutely.
because I actually don't have super strong views, but I know that lots of people watch this, and I just want them to feel brave too,
Yeah.
because it's worth getting in a bit of trouble over some things sometimes, you know. And if you know, I don't care. Well, I do care deeply, but I don't care if someone's going to critique things I'm saying, because that's not really useful, you know.
Yeah.
We're already busy enough and worried enough.
Yeah, got enough on our plate. I totally
So
do.
yeah, I think we're just doing good habits, you know. I hope Mandate Podcast is around for a long time. I hope it gets some funding so that it doesn't have to be just a labour of love.
Yeah.
You know, it can easily attach to those bigger initiatives. If this new government's smart, they will look for things like this that can be measured.
Yeah.
You know, it absolutely can be measured, and they could wrap teams around you to help with feedback from audience, you know.
Yeah.
But I would just about bet everything on it that, you know, in the spaces we're rolling in, this podcast would have had huge positive impact. So, yeah, that's what I want to change, us to have more resource to do it, more of what we want to do.
Yeah. I guess the scary part is as you talk about TVNZ and just some of that stuff, because a lot of their accusations were from smaller groups, like from smaller, you know, like channels. They were accusing them of fake news and things like that. And with them sort of dismantling themselves, that you've got this human resource that now need to go find jobs, but they've been taught a certain way
Yeah.
and they've been cultured a certain way, that when they come into this space where we've been trying to keep authentic conversations going, can you imagine what's going to happen?
100%. 100%.
You have to really stand your ground and keep your, you know, your value system in place, and keep communicating that, you know, the mahi that's been done to date has been around safe conversations, real conversations, unedited ones.
That's right.
Yeah, so we're gonna have a bit of a crossover, I reckon.
Yeah, well, we already do, because we have the radio versus podcast. You know, so radio is, we're not doing radio. You know, radio is its own industry, closely aligned with TV. And I hope they all go to radio, you know. But radio's weird. They call their shows podcasts. But I have always argued against that, because a podcast isn't a radio show re-edited and put on Apple Podcast.
Yeah.
A podcast is a people coming together for a conversation about a topic important to them, and that's put online, you know. And that was started by, you know, the Joe Rogans and the Mark Marons in America, because they had got out of that traditional media and went into just being authentic, you know, and getting it wrong and getting it right, but having people with, you know, good and bad views. But I just think New Zealand's so small that we have more good people. So the chances of getting great guests is high, you know. And imagine the guests we can't get, like really, like Richie McCaw, for example, should be on every Kiwi podcast.
Have you had him?
No, because his management team won't let that happen. You got to pay to play.
Really?
Yep. And, you know, that's just how it is, because for that world, I'm happy to be proven wrong, but for my analysis, that world is very valuable for his time. But man, people need leaders like that to lead by sharing their tips. You can't have dopes like me with their rich lists on, you know.
Hey, that's steps ahead for some people.
Richie will have a proper rich list, and he had the best training, the best mental skills, you know, all the way down. And that's just an example of that elite that should be opening themselves up to this. And you see some people do it, you know, like Adesanya does it sometimes. But imagine how many podcast requests that person gets. Yeah. You know, and but what's cool is I think you've unlocked that system that people have seen who's been on your show. And so they're like, oh, cool, we're going to do the Mandate podcast too, you know.
Yeah.
And so I'm very excited about that, about the people that are still to come. And, you know, we want to hear from Taika, I want to hear from Peter Jackson.
Yeah.
Oh, mate.
And
Gosh.
just for them to be
Some
them
names.
and to not have the comms people come with them.
You almost have to like pray that you could end up sitting on the plane next to them just by chance, eh?
Well, also
Put it out there.
be a bit brave too, that you've probably had guests on your podcast who know those people.
Yeah.
And so it's their job's to champion us
Yeah.
because we're the nobodies who want to hang out with the somebodies, you know?
Yeah.
So that's what I mean. I think if you're looking at that government funding system, they should be funding. So we're just here all the time thinking about how can we engage with awesome people,
Yeah.
and then reaching out to our networks and saying, look, we can do 9 to 5, 7 days a week because now it's part of our work,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
But it's not like that. We've got to fit the podcast in when we're not
Everything else.
working. Yeah.
Yeah. Everything
So-
else.
That's why I picked the podcast as a job, because I love it.
Mm.
So now I can be a professional podcaster, but not through my views and likes and downloads. I just do it through offering it as a service, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I love how you
cool.
position that.
yeah, it's I never kind of thought about it strategically, but one day I said to the guy who runs the studio for me, man, I'm a professional podcaster,
Yeah.
you know? And he's like, yeah, you are. And I'm like, I just didn't do it the way that everyone else has to, which is to have amazing guests to drive big views. You know, I just
cool, man.
hacked it a little bit. So, yeah.
That's awesome, bro.
Yeah.
And you bring up a good point as well, Will, in terms of getting those kind of elite celebrities like Richie McCaw, Dan Carter's, all those kind of people. You think, wow, that'd be awesome to come on the podcast. And obviously you got the comms person, the agents who kind of like you have to kind of get through them
Absolutely.
to get them, and then you get to get someone else, kind of gatekeeping. But I often wonder, I think to myself, I'm pretty sure they would say yes if it was just straight to them.
Absolutely.
I can guarantee that you. No, I'm just have a hunch there that if I was able, or we were able to talk to Richie McCaw ourselves and just email him or
Yep.
message him, I have a hunch that he would say, yeah, I'd love to.
They would. I nearly got him on a silly idea I had to. I don't even know why I talk about this. We'll cut this bit out. I thought it'd be cool to have a Guinness World Record.
Yeah.
So I wanted to have the Guinness World Record for catching a rugby ball from the highest point.
Oh, yeah.
And so it was like 120 meters. So I thought, Richie McCaw flies helicopters. What if he would fly it up? And so I found out, I Googled his helicopter company. I emailed the guy, and anyway, I got on the Zoom call with Richie McCaw.
Wow.
And he was like, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. And then I told him that there was a company, Power Shop, who were keen to support because I knew the marketing guy there. And he said, I can't do it now. I said, why not? He said, because it's affiliated with another business.
Oh.
And so I'm okay with that. But how I learnt that is his big dog manager called me
Oh, okay.
and said, nice idea, but Richie won't do that. You know, and I was like, oh, okay, well, screw you, you know. But not really. But I was just
Yeah.
like, I was a bit bummed out because Richie was keen.
Yeah.
It was the whatever you
The
call
system.
it, the red tape. Yeah, the system. And,
Yeah.
you know, I think there's some ideas that should be above that. And, you know, that's also where TV has the advantage. They have all those contacts. They can call someone. You know, when there's a movie premiere, Jason Momoa goes there.
Yeah.
But why hasn't Jason come on this podcast? He's been in New Zealand for a year.
Yeah,
Exactly.
that's right.
Longer.
Exactly, man.
You know, he talks about wanting to connect with his Indigenous heritage. Well, I'd challenge any, you know, outfit who's putting out content who's doing more than you guys. Absolutely no one.
Yeah.
You know, so those are those gaps we've got to fight for. And
Yeah.
you're right, those media people were coming for us.
Yeah.
And so we've just got to hold the fort. And look, if they want to be authentic and share true stories, go for gold. But
Yeah.
I don't think they want to.
No.
Yeah.
No, they'll just keep operating in what they know. Because this is, you know, this space here is emotionally charged. Hey, it's emotionally driven. It's vulnerable. And unless you're comfortable to be in that space, you're going to resort back to what you're comfortable with,
Yep.
which is cut.
Absolutely.
No, gone too far, pull
Yep.
that back,
Yep.
can't do
or
that.
edit the back of the podcast to the beginning because there was but not us. We just got to roll with what we get.
Yeah.
And look, there's heaps of tension too in the podcast, especially if you're doing a regular show. You do have a feeling that you need bigger and bigger guests. And so that's actually why I really appreciate you having me on, because I think it also represents that sometimes you just got to have someone to fill a gap, and that's the true world of podcasts. If you're going to chase a regular podcast, then, and there's so many things, like what I've put into the course for the kids, there's reaching out, emails, I'm late, hey, sorry, and you got to hold all of that stuff together just to make this moment happen. So there's a lot of coordination. That's not to talk about the investment of all the gear, and so like the fact that it's all off our own backs, pending a few ways we can shuffle around budgets, right? If we get funding for this, we might be able to put a little bit in. But in general, it's just all, you got to start from scratch. And I think that we've got these shows. I'm particularly impressed with how you've got a good size audience. That's hard to crack.
Yeah.
Like I've been podcasting 10 or so years and I have never had a good audience as I had when I first started. And that was just by luck. Most people who start a podcast will get, honestly, 50 to 100 views.
Yeah.
And I still think that's awesome, if I get that on a podcast. Because you think about 50 to 100 people in real life and you're like, that's heaps of people.
That's heaps.
But the fact that you operate in the thousands and then your social clips on top of that, it's like, that's such an achievement that it's very not common.
Wow.
You'll be aware of that too if you look around, that most things are in the 50 to 100 zone in terms of downloads. But that's why I'm most impressed that you've been able to do it your way, have awesome guests, get good views, and so like let's just please keep leading the way. Because it's
appreciate that.
everyone
man.
needs that, man, because it's so cool.
No, hard out, man. Appreciate that. Hard out. Obviously, Brad does all the magic, the editing, and so forth, and so and it is a whole team thing. And so for you to say that to us live and in person, that means a lot, man.
Absolutely.
It really does, because sometimes there are days we think, oh my gosh, what are we doing? Look at the numbers and the views, like, oh my gosh, is this even worthwhile? But just go back to what you said in terms of leaping out in faith, you got to back yourself. You got to really believe in what you're doing. And so hence why we just keep doing, we just keep rolling. And if we get one or a few views, and it doesn't matter, because we know it's critical mass. We know that's in the long run it pays off. We really believe that. And so likewise for you, Campfire, it's going to be the same, bro. And already you're doing amazing things outside of Campfire and to the schools, and also traveling the Pacific. Bro, this is just amazing, bro. And so from one podcaster to another, bro, keep up the good work, man. Keep up the good work, and we'll be cheering you on as well. And so if there's anything else you need from us or whatever, please hit us up. Don't hesitate, and we'll make sure that we look after the also, man. Look after the
cool.
brother.
I mean, I can tell you that lots of people know this podcast because I roll in those circles, and most people don't, because, like the Indigenous space in New Zealand is very small. So I know lots of podcasters outside of that, and they're looking to this podcast.
Oh, wow.
And so, like, that's the feedback that you never get. But, I just think, like, I think it's cool. It shows that our people, even though on, I guess, aggregate of size-wise in terms of population, but we're very engaged online. And this show shows that. So, come on, where's the resource to amplify that?
Yeah.
Why can't there be other podcasts made from here, and have whole networks? I mean, I don't want to get like too much in trouble and burn all my bridges, but millions of dollars go to Tangata Pacifica. Or maybe not.
Bro,
millions.
we just had that conversation.
I might just revert that. Maybe it's like traditionally there was a lot of resource, but that show plays once a week.
Wow.
And it's
half an hour.
Yeah, it's like, okay, great. That system was cool, and it logged a lot of our journey, but there should be 10 of those shows. Yeah. And not off everyone else's back. If we got Imagine how many shows you could launch for $1 million. You know,
Yeah,
it'd be
gosh.
heaps.
Yeah.
If we're doing this on an oily rag,
Yeah,
God,
absolutely,
times that
absolutely. And there would be lots of shows that would, with lots of views and different people and, you know, sports, and think about all the rugby players that would love to have a podcast after their,
Yeah.
and now they've got a space. They don't have to worry
Mm.
about stuff like that. So that's what we should all be championing. And
Yeah, I agree. I
Yeah.
totally agree. And I really love your vision for it. It's about capturing these key moments.
absolutely.
Hey, it's not just the old take the photo,
Mm.
hang it up on the wall.
Mm.
Our new war now is YouTube. Our new war
Absolutely.
now is the screen.
Yeah.
And, you know, people are just loading stuff up on there, their best version, their not so good version.
Absolutely.
You can capture it all.
Yeah.
And people don't always want the perfect photo or the perfect
100%.
moment. They want the,
100%.
like you said,
Yeah.
the twitch.
Yeah. Yeah.
They want to hear the mum and dad's pitch in their voice. Like,
Yes.
that's the stuff that makes them them.
And
and you can't
YouTube you can put unlisted.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be public, but we're so fascinated with like
Who
the
likes it?
Yeah, you know, I've got like 300 podcasts that I've put to unlisted because
Wow.
like I don't know if they still are relevant now, but they're me interviewing people over the years, and I think to myself, that's so cool for my kids
Mm.
that they've got 300 bits of me to learn who was their weirdo dad, you know. And I'm one way with them, but I'm probably another way with people.
Mm.
But because they never get to see you like that,
yeah.
they'll be able to go back. And I just have a deep feeling that that's going to be very cathartic for dealing with loss, you know,
Yeah.
because we don't have that in our Western model, eh? It's
No.
like they're just gone
Yeah.
or they're gone to somewhere else.
Mm.
But of course, we enshrine with photos. I'm just really saying, like, wouldn't it be cool to have more video and
Yeah. Well,
in the morning push play and hear them talking and
Yeah.
you know,
And I think this is before it's time. Like it's time, eh?
Mm.
You're seeing the trend.
yeah.
And so rather than wait for someone else to do it, Will.
So on the list. Oh,
Put that on your list.
No,
my
that-
gosh.
That's an income stream.
My list sits with my credit cards.
Because what was it? How much was it when your parents bought their Stuart Riddell? Is it Riddell?
Photos.
It was like $5,000 back
I think
then.
so. I
Right.
think so. It was definitely in the
$5,000
thousands.
for those pieces of.
And when you got like what 2, 3 pieces, and it wasn't
Imagine the podcast model just for a family for a minute, you know? So
Mm.
let's say we can get funding to have this space open 2 days a week just for that.
Yeah.
So you come in, you do your family story, the team's here to guide,
Yeah.
you know, maybe we have some prepared questions or whatever.
You have a
There could even be a
director.
person to interview,
Yeah.
you know, maybe it's not us, but somebody who is like loves that. There's heaps of pastors who should do stuff outside of Sunday, for example. Come and interview families about their life story.
And buildings. We've got buildings that we could
yeah.
use too.
True, 100%. And then you make short clips, you know, that could be a Google Drive with a few nice photos, screenshots, you know.
Yeah.
It's easily, and it wouldn't cost $5,000, you know, and I just think it'd be way more. And like, I don't know, this bit goes pretty deep, but I also think how cool it would be to, outside of when we podcast, I don't call podcasts, I call them data sets,
Okay.
because I've started to think that AI will be learning from those data sets or podcasts. So this is going to sound pretty morbid, but how cool would it be that we start having families create data sets that go into AI, and all of a sudden that knowledge is not lost anymore, but it's combined. So imagine if you had your grandma and grandfather and you had yours, and it all went into this pool.
Yeah.
And what would the wisdom that would come out of that?
Oh gosh.
It would be massive, and we've
Yeah.
never thought that could be a thing, but I reckon it absolutely could. But you need data,
Yeah.
and I'm just referring to data as podcasts.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
You know what I see? I see you put all that data in there and you go, oh my gosh, they're saying all the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. What are they saying?
They're saying exactly the same thing from like 10 generations ago. You know, and the reason I have that thought, Will, is because, you know, we talk about Richie McCaw, we talk about Israel Lasagna, we talk about all these, you know, like guys who've popped, you know, the top of their hierarchies. But the thing is, when you hear them, oh, no disrespect to them, but it's not new. You know, and you hear the person who's like at phase 3 and they've accomplished the first 2 steps.
Yep.
It's the same stuff, but they just got to keep it going. You got to maintain it or just push it a little bit more. But it's the same stuff that is only you only see the benefits of when you put it in practice. You know, and so while we might be at like level 2 or 3 and these guys are at level 10, like you know, we're listening to a whole heap of things and it's the same principles, nothing different. It's just we want to hear his vision of it or Israel's vision of it. You know, it's interesting.
Absolutely.
Very interesting.
Yeah, well, that probably wouldn't be a bad thing to hear reminders, positive affirmations intergenerationally, you know. You also, like, even just to have an AI, which is your family, to say, hey, when is someone's birthday? Or what's that in Cook Island?
Yeah.
But to hear it in a voice that means something to you. You know, because the only way I can reconnect with my language that I don't know is to go and do the Pacific Centre Languages course, which is like 3 hours once a week, hugely confronting, hard to learn via Zoom. But if you could have your little AI in your ear, which is programmed to, like, every time you ask it, it tells you the word.
Yeah.
Or it only uses that word in the future. You know, so it's English, but for cup it always does that. I don't know, just like thinking about these things, what could be, you know, because we're only thinking about the kind of dark sides of it, because that's how our world is, you know. It thinks about things that trigger us. But I don't know, I'd like to be in a position to imagine that you can offer someone their legacy.
God, that's crazy. Like, what would my dad say?
Absolutely.
What advice? Because that's the one thing I think we miss, is having our dads pass away like 20 years ago, is when you get to this part of life, you're like, what would he advise? You know, what would be his guidance around this? And you don't have that. But imagine if you had the opportunity to take all your data sets, chuck it in there, like for us. And I'm sure our phones are recording our conversations anyway and storing it somewhere. But imagine if we had access to all our conversations, and then when we're not here, our grandchildren and our children would be able to say, what would, you know, Papa think? What advice would Papa give me if I was in this scenario? And I was able to spit that out.
Absolutely.
That's next level.
Well, our kids will already be able to do that, you know, and that's the freaky bit. That we're already kind of manifesting that. It's just not really targeted. It's just a byproduct, of us thinking we're chasing this podcast thing. But, you know, there's hundreds of hours or thousands of hours of you now on there, and they can scope that and they can look for answers. And what's cool is because we're doing podcasts where we talk to others, they get to dip into their world. So they're not just getting your knowledge or your thoughts on things, but you're hearing influential people talk about how they navigated the world. So... yeah, it's and I reckon it can already be done now. You know, you could take the Mandate podcast and, you know, treat it like a data set,
chuck it into
and
AI.
get it to give you some outcomes. You know, I'd done that on my podcasts. I took the suicide prevention one and I chucked it all in.
Oh, really?
And I got it to say, how do we stop suicide? You know, I can't remember the answer, but it was like, it was the summation of all the guests saying, don't bottle it up. Have a trusted person there to let you speak it, you know. That was what, you know, I boiled it right down, that you hold it in, nothing good happens. Just, there's no way that can sort itself out. You find a way to slowly get it out, you know, that's why podcasting's awesome, I reckon, because it helps slowly get it out. So...
is that what you do in your spare time?
Sit in my little dark room.
Bro, you're onto it, man.
You're a man, Will.
It's not. It's weird. I married a German. She's not interested at all in my ideas.
You haven't shared your whānau. Like, you're married to a German woman?
Yeah. So I married a German lady. We met at uni in Waikato. We studied down there together. She was just here, an exchange student, and...
grabbed her.
That's right. And followed her back. You know, married as fast as I could. And that's nearly 20 years ago. So I'm pretty stoked in a world where maybe marriage is being challenged as something that's good. I think it's cool because it represents for me longevity with somebody who's got your back.
Yeah.
And like I said, like she's the unsung hero of these chats because that's the one you look to say, should I do this? I've written the letter that says I'm giving my 4 weeks notice.
Yeah.
Should I hand it over?
Yeah.
And that's the one that's going to be there with you when because you look at the two roads. One, the business won't work, and that means, okay, we've got to sell the house. You know, we've got to go find that next full-time job, and we've got to ask parents if they can help, and no one wants to do that. And so, yeah, but no, she's hardcore. She's hardcore German. Everyone says, what's it like being with a German, you know? And I say, Kiwis won't tell you if you have a booger on your nose, but a German will.
Yeah.
And then you won't like them because you're like, they're so rude.
That's so straight
But
up.
I'd rather be told I have a booger,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
So it's very interesting. But
How old are your kids?
so I got an 18-year-old, a 16-year-old, and a 5-year-old.
Oh,
Yeah.
I always thought
Yeah.
your kids were younger.
Yeah, so the youngest one's 5. That's a little girl. Marvelly is her name. I named her after Marvel Comics. I went online and I thought, like, what's a female superhero name? And it said Captain Marvel. So I was like, Marvelly.
Oh, wow.
I later learnt that means miracle in French, so I'm lucky with that one.
Nice.
But yeah, that's probably a part of my childhood. I was fanatic on Superman movies. I loved the Christopher Reeve films. And they got me through a lot, you know, understanding the complexity between Clark Kent and Superman, and, you know, Superman's the character and Clark Kent's the real guy, and he had to hold a bit in, and where does he come from? That type of stuff really resonated with me when I was a kid.
Wow.
And so in the original Superman films, this is where your viewers are like, I'm out of here. Talk about the rich list. Is Marlon Brando plays his dad, plays Superman's dad. So I called my eldest son Marlon.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then the middle one's Mateo, named after our Cook Island name for Matthew, Mateo.
Yeah, Mateo.
Yeah,
Nice.
but it's also, you know, the Europeans can pronounce it,
Yeah.
you know, because they got Matteo in Italy and stuff like that. So, no, I'm very lucky, and I realise how lucky I am. And so, you know, well, let's wish that luck on everyone, and a bit of bravery and a bit of courage. And, you know, the young kids I work with all the time, they're like, oh, what do we do? You know, I've tried to boil it down to something I follow, apart from the do what you want thing, is like, what's something you find easy and others find hard? That's probably a good indicator of where your hobbies are at.
Yeah.
And then just qualify it. Would someone pay money for that? Because, you know, like, maybe you're awesome at burping, but would people pay money? If they do, that's your business, you know. And that's I think we're all kind of, even though I am conflicted with my views on faith and religion, I do believe we're all given something, and it's actually the adult's job in the world to help you find that.
Yeah.
But we keep bringing our own traumas in, and, you know, like I was saying about the interactions between elders and youth, we're not supposed to burden them. We're supposed to help them find their spark.
Yeah.
So hopefully, if you keep having, you know, people on your podcast who are following their passions, it might sink in, you know. And I hope that to be true for young people. You know, what can you do that you find easy? And some people can paint, some people can sing, you know, some people can, everyone can do different things, eh? You know, I just happened to find my thing, which was being able to kind of hang out with people. It was a coping mechanism, you know, from my not sure about how to read and whatnot. So I just translated that into my job. Now I just hang out with people, then they record, then they leave, they feel good, and they pay me.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's a gift. That's a gift. Well, that's your superpower, bro. Your superpower is just putting relationships and making feel people at ease. And so, yeah, well done, bro.
What do you think your superpowers are? Like, if you take that same
superpower,
like, you know, like, what's something you find easy that others find hard, but you find easy?
Superpower. I think the ability. I feel like the ability to affirm people, make people feel good about themselves. Obviously, you get other things like in terms of art, music, all that kind of stuff. But otherwise, I think my superpower is just to make people feel good and encourage. I feel like I'm more a lot of an encouragement or encourager. So that's my superpower.
Boom.
Or one of them. This comes to mind.
It's great.
Yeah, you make us believe in ourselves, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's working.
Yeah.
I hope so.
I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is I'm really good at making difficult information simple. I'm really good at that. I think I am. I'm good at articulating messages,
Awesome.
making it simple so that everyone else can understand it, a wider group, not just however way I learnt it. Sometimes it takes me a while to process it, but when I've got it, I'm like, cool, I can say it like this.
Awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm happy to hear that out loud because, ours aren't the same, but they can be complementary.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Hey, and if I look at the work you're doing in your spaces, like, isn't it cool that that's coming through? And, that's how we can promote that positive loop, by saying, like, those are the areas that I'm interested in and think can offer something, and it's working because people pay. We'd like more people to pay, but at least it's working, and, maybe that's the challenge for people watching and listening, right? Have a thought about that. What can you do?
Yeah.
And then the good thing about New Zealand is anyone can find out how to contact us,
Yeah.
and if they're looking for positive affirmation, then, man, that's our role,
Yeah.
whether it's a tweet or a text, go do it.
Yeah.
Mm.
And you've got a network here now, guys, so
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah,
you don't
man,
get
hard
one, you
out,
get
hard out.
four.
Hard out, man. Bro, it's just been a pleasure. It has been really insightful,
Thanks,
Will, and also just your journey thus far in terms of just jumping out in faith and doing what you're doing right now. And it seems like you're just there's a lot that's happening in the journey right now, and obviously, and you got a brilliant mind. I think you got a brilliant mind in terms of coming up and conjuring up ideas and real creative. And the things you're talking about, AI, all that kind of stuff. Because some people think, AI is, there's a lot of pros and cons. But I love I love your positivity. Like, people kind of focus on the negative, but the positive. But look at what it can do.
Absolutely.
And so I love your mind, bro, and how you think. But bro, just because I know you always do this, you always do it for all the guests, or most of the guests that come on. I've seen you do it several times. And just talking about the time capsule. If you can just say, one more thing in terms of your family, your whānau, your kids and your lovely wife, and just giving you the opportunity to say something that that's going to be beneficial, or it's going to kind of be heartfelt in terms of your whānau. What would you say, bro?
Man, that's cool. I never thought I would have to be the one to start crying. That's normally my guest job. No, I am very lucky, so for my family, Monica, Marlon, Mateo, Marvely, actually, I hope that I can be better at showing you how much I love you, because the only problem about being a podcaster is you're amazing to guests, but you can be a little bit, you can sometimes use your energy up for your people you don't really know and not have enough for the people you love. So I'm trying to be better at that. I have my alarm that goes off every morning, and it doesn't say wake up. It says, something like be kind, be patient. Because I can, you get the insightful Will tonight, but I'll go home and it's like, have you done your homework? Why didn't you brush your teeth? So there's a bit of a dickhead side of me too, which is trying to consolidate that is no good if your digital version is all perfect. Or at least, you're the cool one. You're the cool one in front of the kids. But I'd like to, and I have these chats all the time with my male friends who are dads, I think it's enough to just really, truly love them. And then they'll forgive for all of the other stuff. I hope they'll think back and think, Dad was trying to do this business. It's stressful. There's maybe he has to project like he's got a pathway, but we know that's not 100%. We're all just trying to end up somewhere close to where we want to go. But no, I'm very lucky. I can, everyone has to lose parents in this world. And I was lucky I had my mum right up until I was already 40, But the ones I cried around was not my brothers and sisters and my dad. It was my family, the ones who were with me every day. And so, I'm very thankful that there's someone in the world that will love me like I love them. You know, with me and Monica, we're just really lucky because we like each other. And I mean that romantically. And, you know, I think there's a lot of stats that say, like, couples just stop being intimate, you know, and like we get a bit taboo about that. But you're very lucky if, like, 20 years someone was willing to be intimate with you and to do those things. And I don't know if there's any other podcasts where they kind of talk about it in our context, but, you know, the kids, they put a smile on every time they see you. They try to keep out of your way when you're on a mission. You know, your partner's there to back you up. And, like, talk about faith, man, that's like a enactment of whatever the most religious stuff is. The fact that they will love you, you know. So yeah, I'm very lucky, and I'll try and be nicer, but I'm sure I'll be nicer when I'm really rich. You know, I'm sure of it. I'm sure if I don't have to worry about how I'm going to buy your PlayStation and pay for your fees, I'll just chill. I'll just like, what do you want to do today? Let's do it. So that's my goal. That's why it took a while for me to get reflective, because I'm just not. I'm in that zone of I want to do. There's work to be done, and we're the generation now who have to do it in our spaces, you know. And you know, those boomers, where there was way more of them, but they're old now. So we got to come through and take some of that power back and take some of their big budgets, and we'll allocate it. And I'm up for that challenge.
Yeah, awesome,
cool.
bro.
Love it.
Man, props, man. You want to say some words, Caroline?
Oh, no. I just want to thank you, Will, for coming out tonight, because I've seen the work that you do. You're always on the other table.
Yeah.
And it's very rare that we get to know who the interviewers are. And so I got to see you've interviewed me twice, and sitting here today with you, I got to learn so much more about you, and you've got so much depth and so much width about you. Like I mean, we could probably keep going on for another few hours, but I know we can't. But I hope we continue this conversation, and we just grow and just keep nudging each other towards, you know, the last thing on your rich list. Cover all of that. I'm really excited for you.
Thank
really
you.
excited for you.
And likewise,
yeah.
you know, like I said, you're a huge part, whether you like it or not, of those words you said on that day really sunk. And so, you know, thank you to you for being open to being on that podcast that day.
Cool.
You know, because for you it was just that day, and maybe it was a stress coming all the way to Mount Eden, you know, but for me it's like we got content that day, great, but I was like really listening. So that's how life must work, right? Just those chance meetings. And man, I cross my fingers that we've offered something to someone watching or listening today. Yeah.
I'm sure we have.
I'm sure we have. 100%, man.
For years to come too.
Yeah, for sure. But also, you know, we don't want you to go empty-handed. We do have a gift for you, brother.
Wow.
And so we always come up with a caricature, a sketch. So just right beside you, Caroline.
Oh, true.
And so this is on behalf of the Mandate team. We always do a sketch of our guests.
Oh, wow.
And so this is for you, brother.
Check that out. That's cool. Can I just share a little story? See my hair's thinning here? How you know my business is going well is because I had a hair transplant.
Oh,
I'm probably one of the only people you know who will admit that. They take 4,000 hairs out of the back and they put them in the front.
Oh,
So
wow.
whoever your resident artist is, in about 6 months, we'll have to fill in the hair. And after my gastric, we'll have to take some of this chin away too. But I love it. I love it. Thank you so much.
Awesome. No,
That's
thank
so
you
beautiful.
very much. Thank you. Well, is there anyone that you can think of that would be ideal to come on? Anyone you think, you should have this person?
Absolutely. Ulu Aiono, you know, my mentor. Tau Ili Ili Alpha Maiava, who I'm doing the documentary with. Those would be two heavy hitters that I absolutely would encourage to have those talanoa with.
Oh, man, awesome.
Yeah.
I'd love to
Richie
have
McCaw.
Ulu.
Richie McCaw.
Richie
Come on,
McCaw.
Richie.
Come on, Richie.
No, Richie McCaw, we're sharing him, right? But even Ulu.
Oh, yeah, Ulu.
Yes,
yeah.
please.
Absolutely.
Conchita, eh?
Yes.
Yeah.
Conchita.
We'll do email connection.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a hardcore
awesome.
dude, but that's the Mandate guest, because, you know, 0 to 100 is he's a real interesting cat.
Yeah.
And really deep into his kind of science on business and wealth generation and you know, his teachings made me very ambitious. And I'm so lucky.
Yeah.
You know, so I said to him, "Why are you mucking around with me?" And he said, "I recognize your search." You know, and I'm like, phew.
So how do you get him to be an investor?
Yeah, I know. That's the trick to get a great mentor. You can't ask them for money.
I know.
I've
so
had
you
to
can't?
hold my tongue many of idea.
Okay.
You know, so
Yeah.
I asked for his time.
That's
as
his
an
investment. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
And I think that's what really wealthy people want. But it's very difficult. I'm like, come on.
Come on.
Why am I buying coffee?
Diversify this way. This is the way of the future. Yeah.
But he might know someone who can fund these things, you know, because
Yeah.
they're the ones connected to those big pockets. And I think that's our, you know, maybe we won't ask him for money, but I'm happy to ask his mate who's really rich too.
Yeah, his
And
network.
so let's do that.
His network.
It's cool,
Okay.
man. It's cool.
I'd love to have him.
Yeah.
I heard
Oh,
him
well,
like 12 years ago, and
Yeah.
I was when he was younger, but I just seen him recently. I'm like, wow, he's
Yeah. Let's do
That's
it.
cool.
I talk about legacy with him. You know, he won't let me build an AI on him. I've already pitched that. I said, you don't need to write books. You should do this AI. We'll record you over a year, and then we'll put that into a machine. And he, you know, he's a very kind of direct man, and he just said, no, it's too much risk. I can't have my shareholders possibly knowing all this stuff. And so I'm going to keep
trade
going
secrets.
at him because I said, well, it wasn't for you, your shareholders. It was for your family. Yeah, secretly it was for me to learn all of the...
I don't know.
You almost had it, man. You almost had it,
I
man.
did.
What would you do in this scenario?
It's funny though because we meet. There's a BP just down the road.
Yeah,
meet there.
We meet there. Yeah.
Tell him to come here. No,
I
was
know.
kidding.
I know. That's our little secret little mafia
Jeez.
meeting point. And
The BP over here.
yeah. That's where he used to invite me to Melba. That was his. That's his go-to. But now, you know, he must live around here because he goes down to. He says, "I'll meet you at the BP when I'm in town." I send a little text. And so we'll sit there for an hour and at random BP and talk about business and life. And, you know, he says, all his questions for me. So, I can't wait for you to meet him and talk with him. Cause,
Quick question. Does he tell you to just focus on one thing?
no, he tells me that it's all about two things, cause and effect. So your product must... You have the same desired outcome every time if you want it to be valuable. So he challenged me, how does that fit into your podcast space? And I thought about it and I thought, okay, so my skill set that I've identified is I can take someone's energy, get them into a zone for their podcast, and that can be the same every time. So I can guarantee that to my customer.
Yeah.
So that's my cause and effect. I know that I can guide them through that session so they leave feeling like they gained more than they gave, you know, and so I'm just believing that's valuable. And then the other thing is he's very big into theory of constraints. So like there's a book called The Goal, and it's about this theory of constraints. That's actually, I think, how he made his wealth, by designing software in the 80s that solved bottlenecks in factories. You know, so factories are live and die by how they can effectively get their product out. And that's what he did. He solved bottlenecks. You know, so a bottleneck might be you have a coffee shop, but you have too big a line, so you can't get enough people through.
Right.
A relieving of that bottleneck or the line will be more profitable for the business. So this is stuff I've never heard of. Remember, I was 41 and I'm 43, so I've only been trying to process this for 2 years. So those are the two big things. And the do what you want when you want. He gave me that.
Jeez.
Yeah.
What do you reckon is the bottleneck in podcasting?
I think the bottleneck in podcasting is it's very hard to get high views because there's so many podcasts.
Right.
So how I relieved it is go viral in your family.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, still bring all of the resource. And it just doesn't matter how many views it gets. It matters what views it gets when it's needed, you know? Like I think of Efeso's family. I'm sure there's a day where they will sit down and watch. Yeah, I actually did a podcast with Fia and Efeso.
I saw that.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
online, and I don't know. I imagine that's what I would go and watch.
Mm.
Maybe not all the time. Maybe not now. It's a very fight and flight moment for them. I'm sure they'll have a lot of influence, but on those quiet days, to hear the talking, and he's very vulnerable in that. So, I don't care if that's got 100 views on YouTube, because the main one is fear now, and the kids, they have it. So, yeah.
It's cool.
It's
Wow.
yeah. So anyway, we'll organise that, because I think he'd be an awesome guest.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah,
Awesome, man.
I'm gonna hawk him like an eagle
That's
now.
right. Yeah, that's
was
right.
kidding.
He recognises your search.
Awesome, Will. Oh man, Will. Thank you so much, Will, for your
Thank
time.
you.
Appreciate it. Also, but also, is there any last words of encouragement for the viewers and the listeners that you just want to share?
Not really. Just that, do what you want, when you want, with who you want, as often as you want, or not.
Yeah, awesome. Appreciate it also. So please don't forget to like and comment and subscribe. We look forward to your well-thought-out comments. And as usual, refine
Unlock.
and take charge.
Mandate.